So good evening and welcome to Conversations with Esther. Today we're honored to discuss a topic that is close to my heart, career, reinventing yourself in the career space. We are also very honored to have Richard Kagoe in the room. We will give him the time to speak to us later. Conversations with Esther is a safe space, media space that allows you to speak to workplace issues and enable you as an employee or a business person to run your business in the best culture that you can. We are experts in organizational culture, and we do this also by training through our trainings and motivational speaking. And we also offer consultancy services for your business. So thank you. I will go straight to pray. I think today I will pray. I will not put Rosemary on the spot. So let us pray. Father, in Jesus' name, we want to thank you and bless you as we begin this session. We dedicate it to you. We pray that you will be with us and that God we will learn that which you've planned for us. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. So today we talk about reinventing yourself in the career space. I have been in the industry for over 18 years now, and I still believe that I have room to improve myself. So I have personally enrolled for courses. I get mentors, I get coaches. I hang around people and networks that will improve me in every way, and I try as much as I can to make myself better by the day. Now, welcoming you all to this Conversations with Esther. We still encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, Conversations with Esther Katiba, our LinkedIn, Esther Katiba, Instagram, Conversations with Esther Katiba, and let us keep talking, and let's keep making our workplace and our lives better. So I want to introduce our guest today, and I will read his bio. I know most of you know Richard Kagoe. Richard has come a long way in the media as a journalist. Richard is a Kenyan journalist working for the BBC as a presenter and producer of the network's Africa flagship program, Focus on Africa podcast. Prior to this, he worked as BBC World's East Africa correspondent, covering and analyzing big stories from the Great Lakes, East and Horn of Africa region. He was hired by BBC in 2018 during its biggest global expansion to produce syndicated TV programs for Africa partners from the Nairobi hub. He was the lead producer for BBC's first fact-checking program designed to debunk disinformation in Africa and rebroadcasted by 48 TV stations across sub-Saharan Africa and reaching 1.5 million viewers weekly. Prior to joining the BBC, he worked at K24 TV as a news anchor and reporter for 12 years. He also had a stint in radio, working for several stations in Kenya before that. Richard is a resource person for the Master's Program, International Relations and Security Studies at the National Defense University, Kenya. He is an alumni of the Standard Global Leadership Center in Joburg, South Africa, Strathmore Business School, where he did an executive education program on sustainability, development, and planning. He holds a BA in Communication Studies, Development Communication option, and a postgraduate diploma in Public Relations at St. Paul's University, Kenya. And that is a huge profile, Richard. Hi, Richard, how are you?
I'm great, Esther. Greetings from Asmara. This room is called Asmara. As you can see, some beautiful pictures at the back there.
Wow.
So these are all tribes that you'll find in Eritrea.
Wow. Oh, beautiful. Nice to have you. And I know most of you just get to meet you on the screens. And today we have you here in the room.
Yes.
Congratulations. I saw something new today. I saw a post that you've started a new role at the BBC. Tell us more about it.
Interesting. First of all, let me say, Esther, thank you very much for inviting me for this conversation that I will be having this evening. I consider myself to be extremely fortunate. I know you have a whole list of people that you could pick to come and engage on issues to do with career development, entrepreneurship, whatever you guys discuss here every week. So I'm very honored and thank you so much for considering me. Yes, it's been an interesting week for me because let's just say officially I started on a role on Monday as a presenter and also as a producer for a program called Focus on Africa. It's been running on the radio for about 63 years. And we made a transition on Monday for it to become a podcast. So that's in line with BBC's digital transformation strategy. Yeah, so a podcast which allows you to catch up, with the news and information at your own convenience using whatever platform that you can. Yeah, so the podcast is usually also broadcast on radio. We used to have like 3 slots before at 6 to 6:30 and at 10 to 10:30 p.m. East Africa time. And now it's available on BBC Sounds and on Spotify, Apple Podcast, all those global podcasting platforms. So it's different because the reason why we took that strategy, Esther, is because a lot of people watch and listen to the news. And I guess most of the people in this call would share the same frustration. You've been catching up on the news on Twitter, Facebook, whatever source of information that you have. Then you go and watch the news at 7 and at 9 o'clock. Then there's nothing new they're telling you. So basically, what they've been trying to do is to update you on what you got updated throughout the day. So what we're doing differently is we're doing more explaining of the news, why it matters to you, why you should care. We go behind the headlines. We go stories exposing and try to make people understand who they are. What's this story? How does it impact on my future? So, it's very detailed. We are big on analysis, and that's what exactly you can expect, in the kind of programs that we produce. So I started on that role, I think about a month ago. So we were in training, piloting, and doing that. And then officially we launched on Monday. So yeah, very important moment for myself in my career. I've never done audio or radio in the last couple of years. I've been in TV for, say, since 2007 up to about now, just the other day. Yeah, so it's different. It's a whole new experience. It's exciting. It's an adventure. I'm loving it. I can't just wait to see what this now takes me to.
Wow, that's great. Now, in reinventing ourselves, tell me about the digital disruption in the media space. What would you say to the 27 and many others that will watch? How would they prepare the Gen Zs and the rest? I know we are in a different generation. I want to drag you into my generation and a little bit. I know we grew up together at some point, but the Gen Zs are purely digital. So talk to us and talk to them. And I know most of them are on the call. Just talk to them.
The reason why actually I see we have had to take that direction as an organization, it's because of the Gen Z you're talking about, yeah? So most of the people who consume news are aging. They're very mature, because in this call, if I can ask anybody, when was the last time they sat and watched the news at 7, they sat and watched the news at 9? You'd remember like 30 years ago, 20-something years ago, all of us would make sure that you're at home at 7 o'clock, you watch the news, at 9 o'clock, watch the news. And for those of us who would want to still watch the news, there used to be a late night edition at 11. And then probably as times changed in 2000, 2001, then we'd watch the news at 6 in the morning, I think. Yeah, so that was basically the pattern. Or you wait for the newspaper, which will be published tomorrow for you to get to, read the news. Or probably you have to tune into the radio and listen to the news. Now, with the advent of, mobile technology, that's really been a major, shall I say, a game changer, because it's changed how we consume news. So news is very immediate, and it's sort of like broken the monopoly that we people in the media enjoyed. So as long as you have a camera, whether you can take still photos, you can do videos. Nowadays, you have people who are called content creators. No wonder they're being targeted by government to be taxed, because people are creating content and they're selling it. So our monopoly was killed, and the industry got liberalized, and everybody became a journalist in that sense. Because what you're doing right now, you're literally broadcasting to not just one person, but a wider audience. And that's mass communication. I think that's what I was taught by Professor Chongombe in university, yeah? So we're reaching multiple people, a bigger audience at the same time. So the disruption has happened. And I remember sometime in 2015, when I was working at K24, Safaricom called our business leaders within what you would call traditional mainstream media. And they called them for a meeting, and this is what they said, yeah? We are changing how we are doing advertising. So what's happening is 50% of our advertising budget will go to endorsements, sponsorships, and to digital platforms. And then the rest 50% will go to traditional platforms, radio, television, and newspaper, and probably news websites then. So you guys have to fight for that reduced budget of 50%. Now that's a situation, because then all of us have to accommodate ourselves. How many radio stations do we have? How many TV stations do we have? How many newspapers have we got? How many news websites do we have? So the cake became smaller, yet the overheads continued to increase and to grow. Now, that's a huge headache for media managers. And that was actually a foretaste of what was to come in the last couple of years. And if you'd remember, there was a time when the former Minister for Information Communications, Dr. Matiang'i, really fought with media people over the digital migration. Because what would have happened is digital migration would have meant, and I'll give you this illustration. Previously, we used to broadcast on terrestrial platforms, like, we have like a physical mast in Limuru, somewhere in Kakamega, like that. So Citizen and KBC had the largest share in terms of physical infrastructure. Now, what happened is when advertisers would come, would say, let's go to these stations because they have the widest reach. But what would have meant for digital, like television stations, we'd have like, as long as I think you just have a connection, I'm not so well versed with technical, but anybody could broadcast from wherever, it could be in Meru, Vite TV station. So the industry fragmented even further. Now, bring us the age of digital content creators. Now, that became a huge challenge. And that's why if you look even across, like the local media landscape, there's been a lot of relaunches. There's been a lot of like targeted, media broadcasting, like vernacular TV stations now coming up. Everybody wants to own a share of the pie. Initially we used to have just English, Kiswahili broadcasting TV stations. Then we had vernacular coming in. Then television took also the same direction. So now you can imagine, it's now regional TV station, radio stations, and then now news sites came, tuko.co.ke, Mpasho, Opera News. There are just too many. So you see, the industry got so disrupted, and that now, was quite a big deal for media industries, as we used to call them, traditional ones, because they never invested in digital research, development, and then also they were not keen to become adapters. They wanted the status quo. If you remember that time, TV stations went on strike or sorts. They said the government had shut them off, for close to about, I think, a week or two or something, because the change had come. And the media, I think, then was probably the last industry to be kind of like disrupted. And now that's the challenge that came, and that's now people have been forced to think. That's why you've been seeing citizen digital coming up, people investing in digital platforms. The question is, how do you monetize it? How do you bring in revenue? Because media operations is a very, capital intensive business. And to break even, it takes a while, it takes patience. And you must have, deep pockets for you to keep it going for so many years because of the overheads. So that's the challenge that has happened. And that's why now Gen Zs have come in, they've disrupted us completely in the workplace, in the office, and then also from a business model point of view. So it's a very interesting scenario, but I think it's, in a nutshell, perhaps I should do a thesis about it.
I think so, absolutely. I remember we had to buy newspapers, number one, right?
Yes.
And things have changed. Things have changed. I don't know who is buying the papers now, because we have that online. And I know I have very young people on the call that would want to be a Richard in the future. What would you advise them? How has your journey been? Just take us through your journey, career journey, and how you have personally reinvented yourself to get to this level that BBC can actually see you, because it takes branding, it takes personal branding and positioning yourself. So talk to us about your journey.
I see, how much time do we have? Because I can tell you, this is a long... Let me just switch off. Let me have my phone on airplane. Let me just switch off my Wi-Fi, because seem to be getting those. Just a sec. Let's see what's up with. Yeah. So it's interesting, you see, because for me, like when you're in high school, guys haven't quite figured out what they wanted to do with themselves. By the time I was in second form, I once watched a guy called Solomon Mugera. He was a reporter then working at KTN. And he did what we call a piece to camera, like that way you see a journalist standing and reporting. And it was in the midst of a very difficult biting famine, I think a drought in 1997. And I think it hadn't rained for close to, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. And he was doing this piece to camera reporting from the middle of Lake Nakuru. And, I just watched that guy, the way he was doing it, and it struck something in me. And I said, you know what? I think I want to become a journalist in future. I think the desire was born then. And I think there was a lot of validation through the schooling period, because I was excellent in my languages, I was doing very well. And there was that affirmation, especially from my colleagues within the class. So most of them are never surprised to see what I'm doing today, because they saw it being nurtured from those years. And once I finished my high school education, actually, I never applied for university, because then we used to pay 200 bob. Perhaps then I think you can get your placement or something. I'd done my research and I found out that actually at the time, the only 2 institutions that were offering mass communication courses, and that was the Kenya Institute of Mass Communication in South B and Daystar University. So those 2 institutions, because I think then at Nairobi University, it was a postgraduate diploma. And so I just decided I don't think I would want to take that route, but I'll figure it out somehow. But it's interesting, because when I did finish my high school, on January 4th, I was in college and I was doing ICT. Because my mom couldn't afford, taking me to Daystar. It was too expensive. I went to Daystar, I asked them for scholarships. It didn't work. But I still had that conviction that one day actually I'll be a journalist. How, where, when, I didn't have those details. I just had the desire. And so while I was in college, one of my classmates, because I was doing ICT then, we were the millennium kids. We were the .com guys. So ICT was a big deal then. So I was doing, software analysis, like used to have systems called computer C++, C++ programming. So we'd create softwares and stuff, websites. I did networking, name it, websites. I created them, desktop publishing, but my heart was not in that. Then I remember once we were doing programming, and that was my last year in college, because it was 3 years and I was doing a diploma. I told one of my colleagues in class, actually, he was called Eric Modibo, I really feel that I want to become a journalist. Then he goes like, you know what? Our family, we are veteran broadcasters. I think I need to link you with my bro and so have a conversation with him. And so the bro had just joined Nation Media Group then. It was called Nation TV. I had a conversation with him at Nation House. And I think I got clarity and sight to pursue my dream. And let's just say that was the end of me in college, SC. I quit.
Really?
I just told my mom, please just use that money for something else. I'm going to look for a job in the media. It was an interesting time, SC, because the media industry was expanding. We had FM stations now coming on board. We had new TV stations coming in. It was an exciting time. A lot was happening within the media industry. It was evolving. And so I just decided to go and look for a job in media houses. I'd go every weekend to Capital FM, Family FM, Peace FM. I tell them, by the way, I can do voiceovers. And of course, I never got opportunities, but I was very persistent anyway, yeah? Just to make the long story short, so I stayed for about, how many years? I think those are like around 2 years, 2002 to about 2004. And one day, Family FM was, doing a bit of changes to their programming, and they're looking for people that they could hire, like new talent. And somebody spread the word around to the program's, I think he was a production manager, that there was a guy here who sounds good, and I think he's raw talent and has the opportunity, actually, I think you can give him a try. And so I went to the voiceover test. On my way out, I was told that I needed to have a chat with the MD. The MD was excited, loved what I was doing, and he thought that I had potential. And he told me then, I think would want to hire you. And we had a conversation. It was I think on a Tuesday. Then he told me, are you ready to work? So I told him, yes. And guess what? I was told, so on Saturday, that proposal you have, you're starting a brand new radio show in this station. One of the things I did is that I did quite a bit of research. It's interesting because I realized that station didn't have sporting content. So I identified actually a gap in the organization, and I came up with a proposal. I told them, I've listened to your programming, and I think this is something that is missing. This is what I can offer. So I came in on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday. On Saturday, you have 2 hours, sports and music, and we need to have Jacob Gosmule as the first guest in that program. I have no training, 0 experience, but you know what? I keep saying this, I see that, success happens when preparation collides with opportunity. What had happened is a year before, and if you remember, there's a guy we grew up with, was called Ndoto. Now, his brother was kind of like a DJ. And what they did is, I used to go and record dummy programs, which now I would burn into a CD, and then I would drop to the radio stations. So technically, you would say I knew, what actually a program would look like. Without no training, no sort of like a support, just somebody to guide and help me operate the machines, and just to show me where the music plays and stuff like that. I was on air and I delivered my first program. And I can tell you, I sweat like a pig. I was dressed in a gray t-shirt. It was drenched in sweat as I did it. It's interesting, you see, as I did that program, I think 2 weeks after, I was told to shadow a guy called Mike Getonga. He's now, I think, the head of presidential events. So he's sort of like an MC for Mr. Ruto's events. I was told to shadow him because he was taking off for about 3 weeks. And I'm going to be with him as he's basically understudy, and then I'll take over the main program for about 3 weeks. Now, if you've worked in radio, you would know that breakfast shows are the biggest show in radio. So I sat in and I did my program and I took on the challenge and I delivered and I exceeded expectations. It wasn't easy because, there's colleagues who had been in that station for so long and were never given that opportunity. There was even sabotage in the process one day. So it was an interesting experience for me. And one of the things is that You see, I don't fear. I'm very bold, I'm audacious. I like taking on responsibilities, and I'm excited with new adventures. And I'll make the story short because it's close to about 18 years of time. And I'll just say this. While I was working there as just one person, only 2 hours every week, then I used to do the dirty job as a production assistant. You're the guy who just sits at the back there and all presenters are calling you, I need this, edit this for me. And I did it cheerfully. One day I spotted an opportunity. Our family didn't have like a properly constructed newsroom. And the head or the main person who was in news, because there were only 2 people, had a medical emergency and news had to be done that day. And I offered myself to do news. Guess what? That was where my journey for news began in the media industry. I built an entire newsroom from scratch, covering current affairs, politics, business, and sports, carrying a bulletin from 6 in the morning until 6 in the evening solo. Those are how many bulletins? 12 bulletins in a day as an individual. Now that led to many other things, as I would say. By the time I left, we had built a newsroom with a couple of my colleagues now who work in very different organizations. And we generated revenue for the organization in terms of advertising, sponsorships, things that had never happened before. I had a bit of a legacy. I worked in a very difficult organization, I can say. People manage the organizations very differently, but I succeeded staying in that place for close to about 3 years. And I virtually worked in all departments, and I left as the head of station. So just got appointed in July, and then I made a transition now to join K24 then, which was a baby, a startup that was coming up. Yeah, so that's how I transitioned actually to K24. They were just looking for fresh, raw talent, people who'd never worked in TV before. And I got there, I became the second top, maybe senior anchor after Jeff Koinange, working under the shadow of a very experienced, journalist. And I remember occasionally when he'd be away, I'd have to step in and do the program called, The Bench. And I will gladly do it because, Jeff was huge, he was massive. Then comes this young boy who's doing his thing and producing an interview 7 days a week, even on Christmas Day. It's a tough thing, calling CEOs. Nelson Curry, I think you featured him before here. He was one of my star guests that I called him and, responded to a stranger he'd never heard from, many other people. And that built my visibility, my credibility as an individual. But I would say this, that my stint, especially for those 12 years, were great because I was a leader, leading a team of individuals, especially on air personalities. At the same time, I was well-versed. I was an all-rounder multimedia journalist. I would report, I could film, I could edit. I had all those skills. And that really made me stand out as an individual. But I would say there's something happened when I joined the organization in 2013, which I think is very important because, especially when we're talking about reinventing, I was majorly an on-air personality. So I was just doing interviews and presenting the news. So I hardly did field production. Then the organization changed hands and we were brought new bosses and different people came in the organization, were poached from another rival station. And I was told you have no place, especially on the news desk anymore. So you have to go in and join everybody else and start reporting. And you know what? I gladly took on that responsibility and I went to field reporting and I was really excellent. I survived how many retrenchments, I think, in that organization? I think almost like 4 of them. The thing is that I kept evolving, enriching and diversifying my skills and making myself, relevant. And just to say this, my ultimate goal was not to go and work at KTN, NTV, and these other organizations. I wanted to work for an international news network. And BBC was just on the 5th floor, and we were on the 3rd floor. And I used to volunteer myself while working at K24, coming in as a contributor. In fact, my first time when I went on live BBC was when JKA was burnt down their rivals hall. And I became the person that they would talk to whenever there were big stories out of Kenya, when they wanted to speak to a non-BBC colleague. And so I covered so many things for them, Garissa, Westgate, name them. And then the opportunity came that BBC was expanding, biggest expansion since World War II, and Nairobi was chosen to become the biggest hub outside London. And there was an opportunity for me to come into the organization, applied, showcased what I could do. I wanted to come into news, but like main news, like reporting and stuff, but I didn't get that opportunity. So I got the role of a producer. I was given a very difficult task of producing a fact-checking program, debunking misinformation across Africa from Nairobi, a very difficult assignment. We pulled it, and I sustained that for close to about 2 years. I had the smallest number of partners, only 4, but by the time I left that show, we had the most, which were 48, and reaching 1.5 million people every week. But I just told myself I needed to reinvent myself, looking at the direction the organization was going. And so I started offering myself, taking on some shifts on the weekend as a correspondent. And for about like 6, 7, 8 months, I successfully got a development attachment with them, and I reported for all, the BBC services you'd imagine. We have about 46 of them, radio services and 2 major world TV stations. And, just making myself visible and dynamic. And when the transition was happening, I thought I needed to learn a new skill. And that's why I applied for podcasting. And I came onto this. Now I report to, I used to work for a program that only had 48 partners, but now I'm doing a program which is the flagship for BBC, covering Africa, a legendary program, 63 years. I got the opportunity to be among the first team now to make the transition into a podcast now. And it's an amazing experience. I love it so much. I would say so much I see, but I'm looking at time. And I'm like a politician, and I can be like a pastor, and I can speak for so long.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
Maybe for the interest of other people who are wondering, SC. We've grown up with Richie, and I also call him Richie either way. So SC, Esther, Richie is Richard. But if there are people taking notes like me, I picked networking because it took your friend to connect you to the brother. It took passion for you to just know what you're made for, what direction you need to take. It took for you to identify a gap and run and take it. And I thought about grabbing the available opportunities in the workplace. So just being available to do the work that is there, and to volunteer. And I know we have Gen Zs here. Yeah. I sit in some interviews, and a very young person in the workplace will come and say, I want a job and I need 100,000. And the employer on the other side says, it's okay, we have the 100,000, but what do you have to give us? And the person cannot really respond, So sometimes it's good to volunteer. It's good to just keep your eyes open in the workplace, and don't complain. I like when you say you did the dirty job, but you did it anyway, and you did it happily. I know we can speak about your journey, but I want to ask one thing before we move into public speaking. I know it's something that we need to touch. What would you say about the impact and more on mental wellness of journalists? Because I know you have had events where you report stories that really touch you and affect you. How do you manage that as a journalist?
Okay, yeah. Basically the work of a journalist, depending on your beat, so you're exposed to all manner of stories, yeah? It could be today you're reporting about the protest in Nairobi. It could be Shakahola. It could be, something else, Helen Obiri, something's what celebration and stuff like that. What I'm saying is, public speaking is very important. Like for myself, I started offering myself from as early as I was in high school. And even when I was just outside high school, I really, it's interesting. I used to watch parliamentary debates when we used to have like the likes of Mukisa Kitui or Malwa, all those guys. Bunge debate was amazing. If you listen to James Orengo, arguing in parliament, and I really desired to, be able to express myself. Not maybe well in terms of eloquence, but just being work in progress. And being able to communicate your thoughts, to argue your thoughts, I think it's quite an asset for any individual, especially in your profession, for your career, and even for your development. And that's why I tell people some of these things are not, okay, well, people are not born with them, you would say so, but some of these things are cultivated. So the more you do it, the better you become, at it. The first time you do it, it will be pathetic. It will continue to get better, the more you volunteer yourself. And there's no end to learning. But as a journalist, like sometimes you would be reading the news and it's a sad story. Of course, you have to, like show empathy because you are communicating. It's an idea you're transmitting to somebody on the other side. So that has to be ingrained in you. So as you're communicating it, people should feel the empathy. You should be relatable. If it's a story that is on celebration, then you also have to sound the beat. But what we keep saying is this, Essie, and this is what I've learned since I joined the BBC. It's not in the big words that you use for communication. Actually, keep it very simple. In fact, we are told, like even for our scripts, make sure that even a standard 4 can be able to understand what you're saying. I know I used to suffer from the problem of trying to use diction and to sound very sophisticated and things like that. We miss the point because what's the objective of communication? So you need to simplify it, but at the end of the day, you're trying to pass information across. So you need to figure out, it's an art that has to be mastered. You can either be trained, you can either read about it, or you can actually be coached into it. But I think it's a great asset that you can have. But I'll shock you, sometimes even journalists are not the best communicators, by the way. We work in a very structured setup, a very structured environment. So if I want to go off script and off cuff, it can be very difficult sometimes. And that's why I tell people, don't try to cram stuff. Understand a concept, understand the idea, and communicate it in the best way that you have understood, then you'll end up actually sounding authentic.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I know we can, and I know people are listening and saying, you can't say that, Richie. And I'm sitting here thinking, I want to ask you, do you still freak when you have to go to the stage, when you have to go to give the news? What's a feeling? What's a feeling?
We still have butterflies, yeah? Even before I came to this call, because I know I'm not speaking to Esther alone, I'm speaking to another 31 people who are on the call. It's not easy, but then there's a way we're able to master our nerves and to, sort of like make ourselves comfortable. But what I keep on saying is this, and I think what has given me the level of comfort, Esther, is being able to just be myself. There's Jeff Kanangi who will say, oh my, I'll just come and say it as me. Well, not everybody will appreciate my style, but there are people who will appreciate my style at the end of the day. So just strive to be authentic, because I think that's the most effective way you can be able to communicate. So it's a natural feeling by day. It's human nature to feel those two butterflies. And I tell myself, the moment I cease feeling those butterflies, then I think I'm headed, south.
Well, I was reading that being confident, a confident speaker is a skill many people don't learn in school. So what would you, I know there are people listening here and they really need to be confident, even not just for news, to even give a report in the workplace. What courses and what do you think that person should really do? How would you help that person?
Yeah, I think first the desire is important in the first place. Like I say, what's your objective? And I'll give you the example of somebody like PLO Lumumba. You know, in the early 2000s, I used to admire PLO, the way he communicates, big words, articulates himself, that's his style. But what I realized is somebody who was with him in campus would say, at Nairobi University, at the blocks there, PLO would be listening to a Walkman or those two audio tapes of back in the day of Martin Luther King. That's what PLO would be listening to, because that's the person that he drew a lot of inspiration from at that time. The other thing is, I think exposing yourself to opportunities where you will be trained or you will just have to volunteer yourself to speak. And I like what Toastmasters do. You know, those forums like where you have peers, where you can be able to learn a skill and to be able to manage it over a period of time. I think that's a great, forum for you to be able to do that. I think there are also coaches who offer this, somebody who can actually work with you over a period of time and train you, especially if you have like senior, roles within a business where you have to address people. But I just say, I think, charity begins at home. Why don't you be offering yourself, if you're in a fellowship, offer yourself to pray at the end of the meeting, at the start of the meeting. If you're probably maybe like in a church setup, offer yourself to go and do like the announcements. If the opportunity is for you to do mentorship, start even with, forums which don't put a lot of pressure for you. It could be even a high school. Go there and, offer to do speeches, talks and stuff like that. Then over a period of time, then you begin learning and managing this, a gift or something that you want to develop in yourself. So it's constant learning. I think you can learn from a book. Nowadays we have, YouTube, we've got various resources that we didn't have before that you can see, you can learn, you can read about. But I think the test is in actual practical demonstration. And that's important. And especially when you're going to be doing a presentation, a rehearsal would help. And I think, Esther, a lot of people do this, especially for interviews. They would come and even have like a simulation and come and even, have it before they go and do the actual interview. But I think the most important thing when it comes to, public speaking and why people lack a lot of confidence on stage, it's because they didn't prepare. If you prepare, it gives you a level of confidence, but you don't have to master and cram everything. Just master the key highlights. The rest, express yourself. And that's where authenticity comes in. And I think that's how I would say in a nutshell.
Wow. I am thinking about all this and it reminds me, Richie, there's a time,
Yeah.
I think I was on, I think we still met sometime at K24. That's, but I was coming to Kameme.
Yes, Kameme.
It's not easy. I would come from a vernacular show, and I was on this show with was it Juguna? Juguna. When the cameras roll, it's not a joke. It's not a joke, and there's no time to stop. You have to really get your facts. You have to prepare. You have to put yourself together, and we really appreciate. I know in the interest of time, I want to look at the charts because I know we can have this conversation forever. And I see someone from Tanzania saying greetings from Tanzania. What a fantastic journey. I love how you kept putting yourself out there, but also sharpening your skills continually. And I think this is something people need to learn, to sharpen their skills. This is much insightful, Richard. Na makofi hapo. Now, maybe before we close, I think as a parting shot, you have definitely gone through our profile as Conversations with Esther, maybe gone to our YouTube, Conversations with Esther Katiba, to my LinkedIn, Esther Katiba. I want to give you an assignment in the next 3 to 5 minutes. I don't know how long it will take you.
Okay.
I think I need to roll the cameras for you. I know I know the language in the language in the studio is cameras rolling 1, 2, you know, like we are set, and I want you to speak to us about Conversations with Esther and cameras rolling.
Yes, about Conversations with Esther. Conversations with Esther is it's a safe place that breaks down nuggets and tips for the safety of the employees at the workplace, CEOs, women in business, corporates as a matter of paramount importance. The program embodies women, leaders, employees' wellness, experience, organization culture, employee and employer branding, health and safety, leadership, and strategy development. It's about authentic conversations with industry leaders, women in business, employees, and stories that matter. Our model explores the inspiring stories behind how experts from various industries have overcome challenges in the business, public, and private sector. Speaking about the vision, transform the organizational cultures while guarding an organization's overall strategy. On mission, promoting the wellness of leaders, industry experts, and employees through workplace models that enhance happier and healthy employees for efficiency, profitability, and sustainability. Business model, weekly shows on wellness, networking events, power talks, brand positioning, leadership development, and strategy development.
Wow. I got an opportunity to also interview you, right? I know you've had an opportunity in your life to interview presidents and the others. And I got one today. We have 4 minutes, I know. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I want to release a Richard in the next few minutes so that the listeners on the other side at BBC will not miss that. But thank you, Richard. That was authentic. That is real. And I like it when people share their stories as they are. Because when we look at you behind the screens, we see a perfect person. We think you were born reading news. Asante sana, we sincerely appreciate as Conversations with Esther. Thank you very much. For our audience, next week, Wednesday, we have Rosbella Abok. She's a multiple Global CX Awards winner, Operational Excellence, keynote speaker. You can check her out, and we talk about customer experience. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Have a great evening. Thank you, Richard. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And Rosbella will be great. I know her.
Yes, we have grown together as well. I think we are a big network, right?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.